There are four main reasons that we are dealing with mineral deficiency. They call it the hidden hunger. The first is that our food supply is lacking in minerals. If you're going to get the same nutrition from eating apples as your grandfather did, where he ate one apple, you'd have to eat 6 apples now.
Wow.
Yes, it's that different. The second problem is that we're all drinking bottled and filtered water. Third reason is that we are all having glyphosate exposure. The final reason that we're all mineral deficient is because we really have no idea how to get the minerals back into our body.
Do you get that same benefit of what you just explained from like these electrolyte powders and drinks?
We don't. So modern scientists say that people who aren't properly replenishing minerals in their system, yes, things other than food, they probably have, we're going to be generous and say 40% of the minerals in their body that they need. If you don't eat well, it's going to be closer to 30%.
That's a small amount, a small percentage. That's why so many people are tired all the time.
If you're one of those people who's got a lot of those cool gadgets and you're still feeling crappy, well,
that's a red flag that you might need to replenish your minerals.
be-
So would it be fair to say those who are eating like a strictly plant-based vegan diet are very mineral depleted?
So here's the thing.
The mitochondria are arguably the most important thing to focus on in the health and wellness space. A lot of diseases out there, diabetes, cancer, autoimmune conditions, Alzheimer's, etc., are linked to mitochondrial dysfunction. And we know the cells, and you'll share in a second here, the cells that are most needed for survival, energetically demanding, are the cells that have the highest concentration of mitochondria. That's how important they are. And minerals are the main driver that fuels the mitochondria. That mitochondria powers our bodies and allows us to do what we want to do. So Caroline Allen, why are we so deficient in minerals? And what is this doing to impact our mitochondria these days?
Yeah. Well, you know, there are four main reasons that we are dealing with mineral deficiency, and they call it the hidden hunger, because when you do not have enough minerals, your cells are literally hungry. There are really four reasons. The first is that our food supply is lacking in minerals. And the way I like to think about that is to make it really, not abstract. When you grow a plant in the soil, the way that it creates the structure in the plant is by sucking the minerals out of the soil. In fact, all the things, these chairs, everything we're sitting on, all the structure in our body, they're all made of minerals. If you took all of the water out of your body, you'd be a little pile of minerals. That's how essential minerals are. But when you grow plants in the soil, and then you take those plants away from the soil so they're not decomposing and going back into the soil, that soil has less minerals. And you do that over and over again. Now the foods that are growing in there have less availability to minerals, and they have less nutritional value. They say that if you're going to get the same nutrition from eating apples as your grandfather did, you'd have to eat, where he ate one apple, you'd have to eat 6 apples now.
Wow.
6 or 7. Yes, it's that different, right? So that's only the first problem. The second problem is that we're all drinking bottled and filtered water. Most of it, all of the minerals have been filtered out. In some cases, you can buy water that has minerals added back in, but most water that's filtered or distilled has no minerals. The third reason is that we are all having glyphosate exposure. And one of the challenging things about glyphosate, just for people who don't know, glyphosate is a weed killer that they spray on mostly grains, and it kills the weeds while the plants have been genetically modified to live. So they spray it right onto the food. You eat that food, and that glyphosate ends up in you. Now, because they've been doing this for years and years, it's also in our water table, it's in the air. You cannot get away from glyphosate exposure. The big challenge is it chelates out very important minerals from your system, like iron, things that one that people don't know about very much, molybdenum and copper. So really important minerals for many biosynthesis processes in the body. And then, the final reason that we're all mineral deficient is because we really have no idea most of us don't have a concept of how to get the minerals back into our body. So we're using supplements that just don't work.
Meaning they're not getting absorbed. They might be causing more harm than they are helping.
Yeah, and maybe harm is, a strong word, but certainly creating imbalance in the body.
Imbalances.
Yeah.
All right, let's unpack some of these, right? The water, drinking water situation. A lot of people have reverse osmosis filtration systems. They're drinking filtered water. They're drinking different bottled waters that are filtered and devoid of all these minerals. And they think they have to drink 8 glasses of water per day or 1 gallon per day. And what they're essentially doing is they're actually losing key minerals when they're drinking excessively.
Right.
So you call it...
I call it irrigation. They're irrigating their system. So if you imagine, if you've ever seen pictures of irrigation out in the fields and the water just goes on and it runs off, they're changing they're changing ways of watering plants out in nature now, because that doesn't really work very well. What happens is you're flushing your system. You're putting a lot of water through and it's just carrying those minerals right out your urinary tract, okay? So what you want to do is hydrate. And hydrate is bringing the water in, ultimately getting that water into your tissues, which is into your cells. So that's a whole different thing to think about.
Yeah, very different thing. So what about spring water, which naturally has minerals in it? Would that be safe?
Fantastic. Spring water is excellent.
Okay, good, because that's what
Yeah, that's what you drink. I like that. Yeah, and in a glass bottle.
In a glass bottle.
That's the way to go.
Which, to your point, the other thing we were talking about was aluminum, right? And the relationship between glyphosate. Because I had asked you the question before we hit record. We know glyphosate is everywhere. How do we limit our aluminum exposure? And you mentioned that getting glyphosate lowered is the key. So what's the relationship between glyphosate and aluminum?
So it's really an interest. So one of the things I want to let people know is people worry about aluminum. I understand, but I also want people to understand is you cannot get away from aluminum. Aluminum is the most ubiquitous mineral on Earth, okay? There's aluminum everywhere. Every time you take a breath, you're getting aluminum. It's just everywhere. But what you don't want is the aluminum to be bioavailable in your system. Okay, so that means being stored in your tissues. And the challenge with glyphosate is glyphosate greatly increases the bioavailability of aluminum because it binds with the aluminum molecule. And then what glyphosate does is it mimics an amino acid called glycine. The body thinks it's glycine and it sucks it up right into your tissues. Okay, so that's the problem. The problem is that the glyphosate makes the aluminum more bioavailable in your system, and it's stored in your pineal gland. It really affects all sorts of cognitive issues, okay, and nervous system issues, or creates nervous system issues. The key to remediating glyphosate is plant-based fulvic and humic substances. So we'll get into that later.
Yeah,
That's the cool thing is there's actually something you can do about it.
Yeah, that's good news because you're right. We can't get away from aluminum. It's everywhere. It's in the jet fuel that's being sprayed into the air. With glyphosate, though, it's estimated 60% plus of rainfall has glyphosate in it. I remember when I interviewed Dr. Zach Bush, he was talking about California wine having about 64 different herbicides in it. Mm-hmm. So what are some ways, eating organic, of course, as much as possible, organic, non-GMO. What are some other ways, what are some other things we can do to mitigate our glyphosate exposure?
Well, first of all, you definitely should try the best that you can to eat non-GMO, specifically oats. Do not eat oats that are not GMO because not only do they spray glyphosate on the plants when they're growing to kill the weeds, the oats themselves have been genetically modified to live, okay? But when they're drying, once they cut the oats, they're laying on the field, and they want to dry them more quickly, they spray glyphosate because glyphosate is what's called a desiccant, meaning it makes things dry more quickly. So they're trying to speed up their processing. So non-organic, and oats that are not non-GMO have glyphosate sprayed directly on them. Please do not eat them.
Yeah,
so
and people are drinking oat milk too.
Exactly. Exactly.
They're,
And I
they're
love
drinking
oat milk because
pesticides.
of the texture, but I'm telling you, do not eat it unless it's organic and non-GMO oat milk. Do not drink it
It's so important. Corn and soyas are also heavily sprayed.
heavily.
Coffee's up there as well, so you
Yes.
want to make sure it's organic coffee. It does cost more to do this, but like it's not an expense. It's an investment. It's your health that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So yeah, mitigate your glyphosate exposure by doing that. Europe has banned glyphosate many years ago. And if you think about why they don't have this crisis with obesity and diabetes, that's a commonality. They don't allow glyphosate, red dye, and all these chemicals. They've banned it. They don't have a whole bunch of gyms in Italy. It's not that they're working out more; it's that they don't have these toxins that are disrupting the gut microbiome.
Well, and the sad thing that you have to realize is even though that they've banned it in Europe, in 2016, I think, they did a test in France and determined that 80% of the people had glyphosate in their urine, okay? So the problem with glyphosate is that it's a full system. And there's a woman, a scientist named Dr. Stephanie Seneff. She wrote a great book called Toxic Legacy, great book. And we don't have to go down this rabbit hole too far, but the main thing to note is that, the glyphosate is sprayed on the food, you eat the food, the glyphosate's in you, now you pee it out, now it's in our water table. Okay, now it's in our sewage system and ultimately ends up in our water. So the cool thing about plant-based minerals is that humic, which is, there are two components of plant-based minerals. One is called fulvic and the other is called humic. And the humic molecule it's really, really cool. I have a friend who's been studying it for probably 25 years. He calls it the God molecule because of its incredible capacity. I call it Mother Nature's janitor. It's this large molecule that hangs out in your bloodstream, and it does a lot of things, but one of the things it does is it binds with the glyphosate molecule, and it builds a biofilm around the glyphosate molecule. As soon as that film is intact, it starts breaking down the molecule. As soon as the glyphosate molecule is even broken down slightly, it no longer can have its negative effects. Your body recognizes it as a toxin, so it doesn't absorb it. It knows it's not glycine now. So this is incredible. You've got a tool that remediates the glyphosate while it's in your system, and ultimately that humic molecule will carry it totally out of your system.
It's awesome.
Isn't it?
So important with glyphosate being everywhere. So that's humic, and then fulvic, from my understanding, is a lot smaller.
Yeah, so fulvic is a very small molecule, much smaller than a cell, and its power is in being an intercellular transporter. Very, very, it's in itself an amazing molecule. It has a capacity that no other molecule on Earth has, which is that it can change its polarity. And in doing that, it has the ability to deliver minerals and nutrients into your cell, changes its polarity, and those things now are delivered. They drop off the molecule into the cell, available to the mitochondria for energy generation. And then it attracts biowaste and toxins and other cellular detritus, et cetera, carries it out of the cell, changes its polarity again, and drops them off inside the bloodstream, where now the humic molecule gathers them up and carries them out.
What a powerhouse. When people think, Caroline, about electrolytes and minerals, they're thinking more of like salts and different products out there. What you just explained with the fulvic, what it does, it has so many features. They're delivering nutrients to the mitochondria, allowing bad things out of the cell. Do you get that same benefit of what you just explained from like these electrolyte powders and drinks?
You don't. And that's, again, why I say that one of the problems of deficiency that we're experiencing, and depletion and deficiency that we're experiencing, is because we don't really know, most of us don't know how to effectively replenish minerals. So we're using salts, single mineral supplements that are made from rocks, shells, and bones.
So these are products that have like sodium, potassium, magnesium is what you're referring to.
Well, those are the salt-based electrolytes.
Yeah.
Electrolytes, but they're also single mineral supplements, all sorts of them. I've spent a lot of time in the grocery stores and health food stores, in the aisles where people are going to buy their single mineral supplements. There's rows of, many rows of single bottles. It's like there's the chromium and there's the, potassium and there's the zinc and the selenium and all the different minerals, right? And I'm like, I talk to people. I'm like, okay, tell me, like, what do you know about this? What are you taking and why are you taking? They're like, yeah, somebody said I need this. The thing that people don't know about minerals, it's really cool to understand, is that minerals work in your body in balanced pairs and triumvirates, threes. So when you take a supplement of minerals, and you put it into your system, let's say it's 50 milligrams of something, I call them megadose supplements. When you put those into your system, your body tries to balance because your body is this incredible engine. It's a natural place. It's more like a forest, If you think about a beautiful, lush forest that's growing and now go take 50 milligrams of, or a wheelbarrow of magnesium and put it on the forest floor, are those plants in that area going to thrive? No, they're going to go, too much, and they're going to struggle until the water comes and clears it away, till there's back into natural balance. And that's how our body works, in minute amounts of things to create this beautiful balance. So we have to start thinking about our body differently rather than like the car. I need gas, put in gas. I need oil, put in oil. Instead, we need to, it's a completely different paradigm.
It is. Magnesium, you mentioned magnesium. So what are you suggesting? How are you suggesting we get our magnesium if it isn't from supplementation? Or maybe there is a time and place for supplementation. So how do we get our magnesium?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So lots of people are using magnesium for sleep, as an example. They're taking, before they go to bed, they're taking, 50, 100 milligrams of magnesium because it'll make you go to sleep, okay?
About 500 milligrams.
Oh, is it 500?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
okay.
1,500 will send you to the bathroom.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So then other people are using magnesium for elimination.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. What I talk to people literally every day, and what I'm asking people to consider is that what they're doing when they do that is continually throwing their body out of balance. So I've worked with some athletes, pro athletes and semi-pro athletes, and they come to me with bad cramping, they've got really bad replenishment issues, dehydration, and fasciculation, which is like these creepy crawlies under the skin, like all sorts of weird muscle nervous system issues and things. And they've been taking tons of electrolytes over the years, thinking that was replenishing. They're drinking tons of water, so they're doing what we're talking about. They're irrigating, they're constantly flushing their system, and all the minerals and electrolytes they're putting in their body aren't getting into the cells. So I asked them to do a test. I said, give me 1 month. Stop taking all of those megadose electrolytes, the magnesium for your sleep because you're all jacked up and all that, and for elimination if you're using it. Stop doing the megadosed mineral supplementation and just use these plant-based minerals that are trace minerals in these minute natural amounts in an incredibly bioavailable format. So what you're doing is, rather than doing the car mentality, I'm going to fill up my magnesium tank, instead I'm going to infuse my body with the full spectrum of minerals that it needs in extremely bioavailable way, so my body, in its infinite, incredibly miraculous wisdom, can go, oh, I need some chromium here, I need some zinc here, oh, we need a lot of magnesium here, oh, we got to have some potassium, oh, we need some calcium, oh, we need some chromium. You see, the full spectrum. Here we need some molybdenum, some copper, and it's there infused in the system, always available. It's a totally different paradigm.
It's a paradigm shift. I'm just wrapping my head around it, right? So I'm holding up your product here, Beam Minerals, one of them. This is the Electrolyze. This is the fulvic, right? 70 plus minerals and electrolytes. I'm not seeing anything on here that says like magnesium 300 milligrams. Or so what you're saying is when you take these plant-based minerals, bean minerals, which I take all the time, I'll talk more about that. It has a complex of minerals and electrolytes, including in that is magnesium.
Exactly.
It's not a mega dose.
Exactly.
It's bioavailable amounts, and your body is going to use what it needs to and discard what it doesn't. Did I get that right?
That's exactly right. And think about, so your body is made of minerals, as I said, and they're actually made in a specific ratio. You utilize a lot of magnesium and potassium and calcium. We call those the macro minerals, but you also use small amounts of very important things like molybdenum, copper, and whatever, all those other smaller, boron, things like that. So actually boron is considered a macro mineral, using quite a bit of that, but who takes boron, right? Not very many people even ever heard of it.
Right.
Okay. So the beautiful thing about humic and fulvic, and this is why I call humic and fulvic Mother Nature's mineral replenishment technology. Because not only is fulvic this delivery system for minerals right into the cells, but it's also naturally formulated in the same ratios that your body utilizes minerals. Because think about this. We are natural systems that evolved from the earth. And when you think about that we're made of 37 to 150 trillion cells that were also made, that are part of this whole evolution process from the earth. Think about back when there were first cellular organisms and there were, then multicellular organisms. And, there had to be, because nature designed it in such a way that those minerals had to get inside the cells, there had to be a natural mechanism for supporting that. And that's what humic and fulvic is. Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing, and I love that it comes from planet Earth. It's not manufactured in a lab. Like it's not man-made. It's
yes.
It's made by God. It's made by Mother Nature. I love that. So fulvic is smaller, gets into the cell and gets things out of the cell. Humic doesn't get into the cell, is what I'm hearing. It's more in the bloodstream doing other things. The
Correct.
janitor you mentioned,
right?
Yeah.
The way I like to imagine it, it's a good thing for people to remember. Think about like a Velcro ball. Mm-hmm. It's extremely sticky on the outside because it's one of the strongest electrolyte molecules known to man. It has a huge amount of surface area, and it binds with heavy metals, free radicals, things like nanoplastics, bio-waste, just general cellular detritus from autophagy, and all the things that it literally just moves through your bloodstream, cleaning things up, gathering them. And then at a certain point, this Velcro ball gets so heavy because so many things are clinging to it at a molecular weight, it falls out of solution and it leaves your body through all the elimination channels, which is really key because we're used to doing detox protocols that require certain detoxification channels to be open, but in nature nature couldn't say, oh, we're going to have to wait, we have to make sure these channels are open. It just had to say, we got to get this stuff out, because back at the dinosaurs were alive, there were huge volcanoes with lots of toxic substances. Okay, so there had to be a natural way to support the thriving of cellular systems, both the uptake of nutrients and minerals into the cells, and also the clearing of any toxicants so that those cellular systems could grow and life could thrive.
Makes sense. I've heard you say too, like detoxification is not, it's not, how did you word it? Like it's not a destination, it's something that's ongoing is what you said.
I love that.
Yeah, you've said that before. That's your quote.
Hey, I said that.
Yeah, I got that from you. It's in my notes somewhere. So, humic and fulvic, are there other companies out there who produce humic and fulvic, and some of these companies they're contaminated with heavy metals since it's from the earth?
Well, there have been in the past. There was a company in Canada that actually had a source of humic and fulvic that was somehow contaminated. Okay, that company was closed down.
I think I remember that. That was
Yeah.
really about a year ago or so, right?
No, it's a few years.
Few years
but
ago?
yeah,
Okay,
a few years
got
ago.
it.
Probably 4 years
Their
or so.
fulvic or
Yeah.
humic
Yeah.
was contaminated.
Now, so, you know, I want to always tell people, no matter what supplement you're taking, you should always find out the source of where that's coming from. You know, always. You should ask for the certificate of analysis of that, okay? So there's certainly other fulvic and humic products out there. There's also just fulvic and humic substances. So shilajit or shilajit, which is the Himalayan version of decomposed rainforests, which became this humic paste. It's a crazy thing. The one thing I want to remind or let people know is if they're using shilajit, you should definitely have it checked. Make sure that they are doing third-party testing for mold, because there can be mold if it's not stored and managed properly.
That's good. And they should test for heavy metals too, right?
And they should. Well, so let's talk about heavy metals.
Okay.
So here's a really interesting thing. If you do a certificate of analysis on any humic product, and
it'll have heavy metals.
it'll have heavy
I
metals
mean,
in
anything
it.
from the earth pretty much has heavy metals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now here's the amazing, again, why we call the humic molecule the God molecule. So there are heavy metals in the humic molecule as part of the humic molecule. But I've done a lot of study on this and talked with the world-renowned experts of this, because I really wanted to make sure that I'm not bringing a product to the world that could have negative effects. What I've learned is that the humic molecule has a certain molecular structure, and the heavy metals that are part of that molecule, they have no ability to come loose and become free-ranging in your system. Heavy metals are a problem when they're free-ranging in your system because they cause oxidative stress, and that's the problem, okay? But the humic molecule is actually just the opposite. Yes, it does have heavy metals as part of the molecule, but it actually goes through your system gathering those loose heavy metals that are in there. And fulvic also will do the same. It gathers heavy metals that might be inside your cell and carries them out, okay? So both the humic and the fulvic are very, very powerful heavy metal chelators. So don't be confused. You know, it's true that if you go get a calcium supplement, you get a certificate of analysis and there's heavy metals in there. Well, I wouldn't take that. But if it's a humic product,
Understood.
That's a totally different animal.
So where do you, with your beam minerals, where do you source the fulvic and humic? Where do you get it from?
Yeah, it's from the Southwest United States. It's in a particular deposit it's actually known as the richest deposit for humic on Earth that they've found so far.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really cool location.
Have you been there in person?
You know, Dan has my business
your
partner,
business
but
partner
I
has it.
haven't.
Yeah, that'd be a cool video to make over there.
Yeah. Oh, I know. We were actually planning on this year making a Beam Minerals video, and we're hoping to go down there.
That would be very cool. Yeah. All right. So, you know, if you've been to any of these big biohacking health conferences, KetoCon, different conferences, chances are you've tried Beam Minerals. You probably were a vendor there, and you have those shot cups that you usually have people take.
Right.
I've been taking this for over a year now. When I first interviewed you over a year ago, and ever since then I've been taking it consistently, and I love it. I give it to my dog, as I mentioned as well. Yeah, so I have a pet line. There's two main ones here that I'm holding, which is the Micro Boost and the Electrolyze. Explain the difference between these two, and how do you take these?
Yeah. So the two together we call the multi-mineral solution. Okay. And the reason, so the Electrolyze, it comes in a green bottle, it's the fulvic product, and the Micro Boost is the humic product. Now, don't be confused. If you look at the label, you'll see that there is some fulvic.
That's what I saw.
In that humic, in the Micro Boost product, which is in the blue bottle. The reason that there's fulvic in there is really interesting. Remember how I talked about the fulvic being able to change its polarity? Well, the interesting thing is it changes its polarity and it keeps that solution within a specific pH range. Isn't that interesting?
Super cool.
And what's interesting is because the symbiotic relationship between the humic and the fulvic, it does that, and it keeps the humic completely in suspension. You'll never have to shake that bottle.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that's
if
great.
we don't put the fulvic in there, the humic will fall out of suspension and end up on the bottom of the bottle. But we blend it with the fulvic just enough to keep it completely ionized. Now, the reason that we do that is that, you know, most pills, powders, flavored drinks that you take, they first have to be digested. And this is the interesting thing about minerals and getting them into your system. You might take a pill. Let's say you took 320 milligrams of magnesium in a capsule, and it goes down in your gut, and then it slowly has to digest. Takes a period of time. You only actually ever even digest down to the level that it can be absorbed, maybe 10 or 12%, right?
Yep.
The rest is just eliminated through your elimination channels. But when you drink these products, even though there are minute trace amounts, they're 100% bioavailable. In
100%.
fact, 100%, meaning that when you drink them, they start absorbing directly through the lining of your mouth, your esophagus, your throat. By the time they hit your stomach, your body is actually already utilizing that. It's absorbed into your bloodstream, and some small portion of it has been assimilated into your cells. So we go to these at the aid stations at bike races, and we have some really fun stories from that. So these guys come in from they'll usually go out and they hit the aid station on the way out, and then they come back and they hit it on the way back. So on the way out, they're like, nah, I don't need anything, no problem. And then, but on the way back, they're like cramping, they're like really burned out. And they know that if they take the salt-based electrolytes that are being offered, their stomachs are going to cramp and they're going to feel really nauseous and want to throw up. So they don't want to take those, but they're really depleted. So we say, try this. They take a shot, and within a minute, they're like, whoa, what just happened?
Wow.
They're like, could I be feeling that already? And we're like, yeah, you can. Or the other thing we do is we take our spray, which is our fulvic Insta-Light spray, and we'll spray down their legs. They come in, they're literally cramping their thighs, their calves, often their wrists, their lower backs, and we'll spray them down. And within minutes, they're like, I can't believe it. They're just amazed at the difference.
That's
So,
awesome.
I know.
That's super cool. You know, it makes me think about these professional sports teams, NFL, NBA, etc. They're still drinking Gatorade. It's like thinking that's hydrating them. It's like, yeah, there might be some electrolytes in there, but it's sugar. They need to replace that with beam minerals.
Well, we're in a process with we want to get, it's like USADA, or there's some sports. You have to be, to have a professional sports person take this, they have to go through their kind of, make sure there's no doping
Yes.
things
Makes
in
sense.
there. So we have to go through a process, and we've just started that. So
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool to see.
oh my gosh, these are such incredible products for performance. Incredible.
You know, my audience is primarily those doing more of a low carb sort of diet, right? Keto, carnivore. They're doing a lot of fasting, and it's terrific. But we both know, Caroline, when you do these sort of approaches and you start to lower insulin, you start to shed all this excess water weight, minerals. There's like this diuretic process that happens. So we've heard of like the keto flu. We've heard of people getting a headache with keto or fasting. We've cramping, right?
Cramping.
Night cramps,
Huge.
leg cramps, huge. So I have a lot of my students take this, especially in the beginning as you're getting adapted from being a sugar burner to a fat burner. Like you start replenishing those minerals, or you get cramps, you just keep it by your nightstand and spray it, like immediately goes away. So how much of this should we be drinking? Like for me, I simply just open it up and just take a couple sips and that's how I go about it. But I'm not really measuring it. But if we did, what's the optimal dose of this?
Well, let's talk just about a normal person who just isn't doing a lot of fasting or
Yeah.
doing, just a normal person just for standard mineral replenishment. They're not a performance athlete. They would take a half an ounce of Electrolyze and half an ounce of MicroBoost every day.
That's it. It's not a
That's
lot.
it. No, it's 1 ounce of liquid every day. You're done like that. It tastes like water.
It doesn't taste like
So
anything. Yeah.
that's it. Okay. Now let's talk about somebody who's going to start doing keto or low carb. Let's just talk about that, and we'll talk about fasting next. Okay. What we have found is that before you're going to start keto, before you're starting to, cut down on your carbs, start for 2 weeks drinking our minerals. So what you're doing is you're loading your system. And the beautiful thing, because these are ionic, which means they're dissolved and they're also suspended, they stay in your system longer. They don't just get eliminated out the way those powders and pills and flavored drinks do. And so they build up over time. So 2 weeks, you take them, now start into your low carb and jump into keto, you won't have any of those symptoms.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Smooth transition.
Smooth transition. In fact, that's how we actually first really had an impact in the marketplace, was because all the keto people came to us and they're like,
Right.
all the keto coaches, they said, all my keto people, I tell them to use your minerals because they don't get the keto flu, and then they feel success. Okay. So now with the intermittent fasting.
And by the way, just sorry to
Yeah.
cut you off.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why the company used to be called
Keto Beam.
Keto
Right.
Beam, right? So
Right.
you might be familiar with that. It used to be called Keto Beam. Now it's called Beam Minerals. So it
Right.
makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So with fasting, go ahead.
So the thing with fasting, one of the challenges with fasting is when you go into autophagy, well, let's actually start before you're fasting. So most people are already working so modern scientists say that people who aren't properly replenishing minerals in their system via things other than food are probably we're going to be generous and say 40% of the minerals in their body that they need. If you don't eat well, it's going to be closer to 30%.
That's a small amount, a small percentage.
I know. It's like take this light and just dial the whole dimmer down to 30 or 40%, and that's how most of us are operating.
That's why so many people are tired all the time.
So now take a person like that and now have them start fasting.
Yeah. Well,
Oh my gosh.
even worse. Yeah.
The whole system just starts, literally. So what is a cramp? It's kind of interesting to think about. What is a cramp? When you have a foot cramp or a leg cramp, what is a cramp? It's just the cells in the local area where that muscle is. They cannot produce enough energy to release the muscle. So they've provided enough energy to contract the muscle, but they cannot generate enough energy to release the muscle. And why can't they? Because they don't have enough mineral cofactors available for the mitochondria in that area to generate the energy. So, if you're at the gym and you're pumping a muscle and, it gets to a certain point, it's like, I can't go anymore. You stop, the blood moves through that area. It's bringing more minerals. Now the muscle starts to relax. It's like, oh, okay, now I can do more. So most people are starting at a depletion or deficiency level. Now we're going to go into fasting, and they're going to go, it can be too much for their system, and they start having all sorts of keto flu symptoms, cramping,
headache, fatigue,
they get a lot of stomach discomfort. So if you, again, same thing, if you're going to try to do intermittent fasting, you've never done it before, start by loading with the minerals for like 2 weeks beforehand, 10 days, then do your fasting. And when you hit that point in your fast where it's like, I don't know, just have a shot of Electrolyze. Boom, you'll feel better in 5 minutes.
That's pretty quick. And for those of you who do more long, like block fasting, 48 hours,
Yes.
5 days. I've done a 5-day water fast.
Oh, yes.
I think you've done long fast too, right? Have you done a long fast before?
Yes, I have. Water fast.
Drinking bean minerals. It's not going to break your fast. It's not going to break autophagy. It's not going to raise glucose. There's no calories essentially in it. So it'll just help assist that longer fast. So definitely add this to the arsenal if you're doing a longer fast.
Absolutely. And if you're doing longer fasts, like the 5-day, you'd also want to add some humic in. So the Electrolyze, because the fulvic is such a small molecule and it absorbs so easily and quickly, that's for like a quick pick-me-up. But you also, because you're in autophagy, right? So you're losing a lot of the toxins and different things. Your body is doing cleanup. You definitely want to include the humic.
So both of these is what you're saying.
The
Electrolyze and the microboost.
And the microboost.
Yeah, we're going to put links, by the way, for those watching or listening on the podcast. We're going to put links for Beam Minerals, beamminerals.com/ketocamp, and the coupon code for you to get, I think it's 20% off, which is pretty great, is Azadi, my last name. So go check that out. There's also, you have these sprays. I use this. I just like the way it smells.
Which one is that?
This is the Happy Lights.
Oh, yeah.
It's the bergamot. I just love the way this one smells. And this could go on my skin, right?
The best way to do is actually you breathe it in, but you might want to remove your glasses.
That's okay.
So here's the
that
thing.
does smell good,
when
actually.
you think about depression, anxiety,
Oh, that's good.
or
Panic attacks.
panic attacks, right? Those things are actually neurotransmitter washes in your body. They call bergamot, which is the essential oil that we have in there, nature's Prozac. For most people, not everyone, but for most people, because your olfactory tract, your sniffer, is connected with your lower brainstem, which is where most neurotransmitters are triggered. Of course, they're connected with other places in your body, but it will change the neurotransmitter wash in your body in 5 seconds.
Wow.
So literally, you spray that you breathe it in, and about 5 seconds later, you'll feel this feeling, and it's like a wave coming through your body. So for people who are really dealing with anxiety, I mean, I'm building a business. I sometimes have it.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't deal with anxiety in this day and age?
Exactly.
So if I get into an argument with my fiance, I just spray this on her. Is what you're saying?
No, you spray it on yourself.
On myself. There you go.
That is what I always tell people, because people are always like, "Oh, I'm going to get this for my husband. I'm going to get this for my wife." I'm like,
To get it for yourself.
"No, you're not."
Yeah. So when I travel, I'll take the to-go ones. So you have the smaller bottles, which is
Right.
what is the 3.4?
Yeah, which is good.
you could travel with. But I also take the capsules as well, which is easy. I love the products, and you also have a line for pets, right? So share that a little bit, because a lot of people they'll prioritize their pets more than themselves.
Well, I'm going to tell you, if you think about your pets, and especially if you have dogs and cats, and a lot of people keep their cats inside, but if you're not, giving them all organic food and raw food, or cooking your food yourself for them, they are getting glyphosate. They're getting a huge amount of glyphosate exposure. If you think about, if you take your dog on a walk, everywhere your dog is sniffing is right down at the ground where the glyphosate is. So their exposure levels are much higher.
Yeah, you're right. And then they walk into your home and they track it back into your home.
Well, that's definitely something.
So when I walk my dog, to your point, if I see like my neighbor has like that sign that this has been whatever they call it, like we stay away from that.
Yes,
like
good.
whenever I see those signs, we stay away. But sometimes there's no sign, and I don't know. And you're right, the dog is stepping on it, it's bringing it back inside. So
Well, and the rain then goes, and it
And then
ends
the rain.
up where
Yeah.
then your dog goes and drinks out of
it's
a
a
puddle.
problem.
And,
You know, the cool thing about Miami is that they've banned glyphosate in
oh,
public.
fantastic.
3 years ago. They banned it in public areas, right? But people's homes are private, right? We can't control that. But all the parks, I don't have to worry about glyphosate. Golf courses is a different story, but all the public parks, there's no glyphosate. It's banned here.
Exactly.
So you were making a point, sorry, with pets.
No,
Yeah.
that's fine. That's perfect. So, so you really want to get your pets, particularly the Humic, and we do have an electrolyte product for really active animals, because there are some, if you have a dog in Miami and you take them to the park and throw frisbee all the time, they need electrolytes just the same way you do. We had a great story we have a zookeeper, a zoologist in the UK, and she took our products to the zoo.
Wow.
Yeah, she took our microboost particularly, and she put 2 bowls of water down for every animal in the zoo. Every animal in the zoo. She put one container with plain water and the other container with some microboost. Every single animal in the zoo chose the water with the microboost and drank it all the way down.
Wow. That's interesting. They know
Isn't-
animals know healing.
And they know what's good for them.
They do.
Yeah.
That is fascinating.
I just had a friend another podcaster, and he took his dog out for a walk because he didn't believe it, and he came back, put the 2 bowls down. The dog went immediately for the one.
I'm going to test that out too.
Yeah, try it out.
That is
It's
so
really
interesting.
fun.
Yeah. We have 2 cats here as well in my house, and every morning, you see I have like the red light panels back there. We do the red light therapy, and the cats are in here waiting for us to turn it on.
Oh, that is so cool.
They know healing. It's like they love it, and he loves it too. Like the
that's
PEMF mat, he lays on it.
Oh, yeah.
Animals know. There's no placebo effect. Like
Exactly.
they're not. It's really just straightforward. So
People sometimes ask, well, can I just use the human products with the cat, with my dog or cat? And you could.
I do that when I run out.
Yeah,
Of the other one.
The main reason to use the pet products that we have is it's not the best, actually, although I told the story of putting it in the water. First of all, if you put microboost in your dog's water, it's going to end up with black spots all over your
That's the
floor,
problem,
which is
yeah.
not great. So what we've actually done is created a product that you just use a dropper, and it's more concentrated, and you put that on their food.
Yeah.
Because they'll eat all their food. Now you're assured that they've gotten all their minerals that day.
Smart.
They don't necessarily drink all the water.
What's it called? That one?
The 2 products are canine multi-minerals and feline multi-minerals.
Awesome. That's good.
Or complete feline mineral. I've forgotten the name. Anyway, you'll see
It's
them
on the
our
website.
website. Yeah.
One of the things, a lot of people are eating a lot of these anti-nutrients, oxalates, lectins, and I'm not really sold on the fact that we need to avoid them altogether. I think it's the health of your gut, but a lot of people have a compromised gut. And things like oxalates and different anti-nutrients, they're chelating minerals out of the body as well, along with glyphosate and all the problems we spoke about. Mm-hmm. So would it be fair to say those who are eating like a strictly plant-based vegan diet are very mineral depleted?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes. I mean, again, they also might be amino acid depleted.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
So there could be other issues, but and I'm not against a plant-based diet at all. And I do want to clarify the difference, because some people don't when I say plant-based minerals, they think we took plants and ground them up and made them into minerals, and that's not where they come from. Is imagine an entire rainforest back when the dinosaurs lived 65 million years ago. A huge meteor hit the earth. Those rainforests decomposed, and it's in the decomposition of freshwater plants that humic and fulvic are created. So you can use minerals from the sea or other types of plants, from rock shells, bones, or from salts. Those do not have those amazing capacities of the fulvic and humic. They have some mineral content, but they don't have the delivery system or that of the minerals into the cells or the detox. So just to clarify the difference. So,
and since the question somebody's asking is, these are plant-based, are there any like oxalates and anti-nutrients in here?
There are not.
They're not.
None.
So
Zero.
it's say, I know it's plant-based minerals, but even if you're doing carnivore, I think it's fine for carnivore because the primary goal of carnivore is to eliminate these anti-nutrients. There's none in here. So to me, it's a safe carnivore product, even though it's plant-based, but who cares? Why do you want to be so rigid? I think it'll support carnivore very well.
Oh, believe me, we have some really big people who in the carnivore
They take
world
it?
that love
Yeah.
minerals. It's incredibly effective. Yeah, and again, not all carnivores are also eating all organic, grass-fed, grass-finished
True.
beef, so they're definitely having potentially higher exposure of glyphosates because all of the animal feed that is when they're doing grain finishing of all the beef,
That's
it's
glyphosate.
completely glyphosate ridden. All the chicken feed, if you're not using organic, non-GMO chicken, it's all glyphosate ridden. And I have actual scientific studies that have been done on chickens showing how much the humic reduced the glyphosate in the actual meat.
Interesting.
Yeah, so really super important.
So they gave it to the actual chickens?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
They gave the chickens feed that was their standard feed, and then they added humic into the feed, the same feed with just humic, and it reduced the amount of glyphosate like 40 to 60% in
cool.
different tissue areas in their body. Isn't that?
That is cool. And even if you can't, even if you are eating chicken that might have had that feed, by taking this, it'll mitigate the damage either way.
Exactly. So relative to the oxalates and the mutagens, et cetera, some people have asked me, well, is humic gonna, detox me too fast and create problems because I've got oxalate issues in my body? And I'm like, I want people to relax and understand that humic and fulvic are the most natural substances that your body can utilize. Now, we should talk a little bit about humic for people who are very sensitive, who have autoimmune, who have mold exposure, who've had long COVID, or there's another one I can't think of it. But if you know your system is very sensitive and you tend to have what are called Herxheimer reactions, maybe a rash, an ache, or aching, or headaches, or things like that, you should just start very slow. And we have an article on our website we can put in the notes. It's about Herxheimer and humic. It really demystifies it. And at the end of it, there's just the simple, slow introduction method. It's everybody who follows that. I've only had maybe 2 people who struggled and weren't able to actually use humic at all.
What percentage of people are sensitive would get a Herxheimer reaction to?
Oh, it's, well, I will say that since COVID, so before COVID, in our entire time before COVID, maybe I had like 6 people contact me, with Herx, and now we get 1 or 2 a week.
Wow.
Maybe a little, maybe one to two. Yeah, maybe 1 to 2 a week.
So after COVID, it increased.
Yeah, and it has to do, so before I had COVID, I could just take that, pour it in the cap and drink it. But ever since I had COVID, if I do that 3 times in a row, like 3 days in a row, I'll start to get a rash or I'll get a pimple on my nose, or, it's just a Herxheimer response.
Yeah.
It's all it is it's the body saying, great, I've got toxins and I'm going to get rid of them and I'm going to do it all now.
Yeah.
And it's just doing it a little more quickly than is comfortable.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, and then your website has, how to titrate it up and start very low and slow if that's you. I've never had a Herxheimer reaction, and I probably take, 2 or 3 sips. That's probably like 3 ounces a day of each. So I do, and I do it pretty consistently too. So I this works really well for me. Never had a Herxheimer reaction.
Well, thank goodness.
Yeah.
You are a very lucky person because I'm a person who's dealt with them all my life. So, but that's just in my DNA. I don't detox well. So.
Yeah, I know some people have different SNPs. So with those who have an issue with anti-nutrients, well, I mean, the point of the question was this: if somebody's eating a lot of oxalates, they really need to replenish their minerals because the oxalates chelate them as well, right? These anti-nutrients also remove minerals, similar to how glyphosate does it, right? So many reasons why to replenish those minerals. I mean, the most important thing was the first thing we spoke about, which was your mitochondria, your batteries, right? And one of the things you mentioned offline the cells that are most important for survival, the heart, the eyes, the ovaries, etc., have the highest concentration of mitochondria versus other cells that are not as important. There might be a few hundred versus a few 100,000 to a million. Like, that's how important the mitochondria are. Exactly. And the mitochondria's energy source is amino acids and minerals. Those are the two main things, right? And we make amino acids, but we don't make minerals.
Right.
So if we're not getting them through a high quality source, that light is becoming depleted, and that's why you feel off. Exactly. So how do you turn that light back on? Replenish your minerals.
Exactly. Start there.
Start with
minerals, and start particularly with the humic and fulvic. And the other thing I want to mention about fulvic that's so cool is, think about all the other foods you're eating. So you're using these, let's say you're using bean minerals, and each day you're taking your certain amount of fulvic of the Electrolyze product. Now all the other food that you take, all of the other supplementation you take, everything is going to be more bioavailable. It's going to have more accessibility to the inside of your cells where it can have its effect.
I love it.
Isn't it? So it's supercharging everything you're doing. And we work with a lot of nutritionists who just come to us and say, at a certain point, I just realized, like, when someone's going to work with me, the first thing they're going to do is start with the minerals. And then all the other things that we work with, protocols that we use, become much more effective. And they start to gain momentum. They start to have more energy, feel better, etc.
That's a very important thing you just shared, Caroline, because what I see in the biohacking space is that we fall in love with these fancy things, right? And I'm guilty. I have a cold plunge. I have a red light therapy. I'm getting a sauna. I have this In Harmony. I have all these amazing devices, but like, those are add-ons to the foundations. First, you take care of the foundations. One of those starting points is getting your minerals up, getting those key minerals back into your body, because you could do all the red light you want, but if you're mineral depleted, you're still not going to get the result you want. You could do all the cold plunging you want, all the fasting, all the sauna, but if you're mineral depleted, you're still not going to feel how you want to feel. Right. This is the foundation right here. You take care of your minerals, then everything else works just that much better, including your supplements, to your point.
And in fact, if you're one of those people who's got a lot of those, cool gadgets, and you're still feeling crappy, well,
that's a red flag that you might need to replenish your minerals.
You might need to replenish minerals. When we're at shows, there's a lot of people who do PEMF stuff and all sorts of different protocols. And what they often do is they send them over to our booth to get some minerals first, because then when they do the actual PEMF, they're like, wow, I really feel that. But because if they come in really depleted, they won't even experience it.
That's true. They do that. I've seen that.
Yeah,
they give them minerals.
They really do it.
That's funny.
So, so minerals, and this is why I am, I believe that effective mineral supplementation is the true vanguard of health. It's why there's this term, the hidden hunger, because if you could do nothing else for your health, if you could just find a really good source of full spectrum of minerals that are bioavailable and just provide that, it's going to be an incredible beginning foundation for you.
Yeah, well said. My community loves your products. They Keto Camp Academy students who are watching and listening,
awesome.
you know it. Y'all take it. Y'all love it. They talk about it all the time. So for those listening and watching, we encourage you to give it a try. You'll notice a difference fairly soon, I believe. So it's beamminerals.com/ketocamp. The code is Azadi. I have a final question for you, Caroline. I talk a lot about gratitude. I call it vitamin G. Speaking of supplements, this one is not a supplement you could buy, but it's free. Gratitude, vitamin G is incredible. It puts you in this anti-inflammatory state like in a second, helps your body produce dopamine, serotonin, GABA. What do you have vitamin G for today, Caroline? What are you grateful for today?
My gratitude that just really welled up when you talked about that is gratitude for you and what you are doing in the world. I've known you for a few years, and I remember walking up to you actually at Keto Con.
I remember.
And I had known of you, and I just said, hey, I want to talk to you about minerals. And you were so open, and you just immediately said, yes, let's get together and let's talk. And we have relationships with a lot of different people out in the world, but what I've always experienced from you is this beautiful availability, not just to me, but I've watched you with other people, and that in this world today is like gold. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I remember that conversation at KetoCon. Came up to me towards the end of it, and you told me all about your story and minerals, and then we had our first conversation on the show, which was virtual. This one's in person. I'm grateful for the fact that you have done a lot of the research that a lot of people don't have time to do, or they don't know how to do it. And then you got the solution for us, a very easy solution. Just drink this every day, so the solution for humans and for pets. So thank you for what you do. I love the partnership and the relationship we have. And me and Caroline are actually speaking and attending the Biohacker Expo, which is tomorrow. It's going to be after this episode has aired, but we're going to have some fun here in Miami at the Biohacker Expo.
That's right.
You're going to have your booth there, and you're doing a panel and speaking and all that good stuff. But Caroline will be at a lot of conferences, so look for Beam Minerals at these conferences. Try it out for yourself. BeamMinerals.com/KetoCamp. The code is Azadi. And Caroline, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Ben. It's a pleasure.